My name is Tyson Holmes. I work at the Gibraltar Museum and I've been involved in the Gib-Bats project since 2013. In Gibraltar we can see 7 species of bats. From smallest to largest we have the 3 pipistrelle species known as the soprano pipistrelle, which is the smallest bat found in Europe. Then we have the common pipistrelle and the Kuhl's pipistrelle. We also have the Schreiber's bat, which is a cave-dwelling bat. Then we have the Isabeline ceratine, and we have the free-tailed bat and also the greater noctial bat, which is Europe's largest and rarest bat. We can find the pipistrelle species in Gibraltar in buildings mainly. It's mainly an urban species, or at least adapted to urban environments. The Schreiber's bat is more found in tunnels and in caves. And we have other bats such as the free-tailed bats, which normally tends to roost in crevices, in cliffs and caves.
My name is Albert Yomi. I lead the bat group on the Gone side of the Gib-Bats project, which is also made up of UK experts, the Gibraltar Museum, and supported by the Department of the Environment. Bats, even though they are very small and you'd expect them to have a shorter lifespan, some of them can live many years, a dozen years or more. Obviously there are records of more and less, but they have a very slow birth rate, and that is because they fly. So female bats will generally give birth to a single bat, a baby bat called a pup. It's normally once a year. Sometimes some of them have twins, but the reason they don't have many young is that they may need to fly. They may need to fly off if the roost is disturbed, for instance. They may need to get the pup on its belly and fly away from the roost to safety. So that's the main reason. So they take a year between births generally. So they will look after that bat, and so they reproduce their populations fairly slowly. So if, for instance, a bat roost is disturbed or is threatened in any other way and there's mortality, the population will take many years to bounce back due to that slow rate of reproduction.
I'm Stuart Finlayson. I work in the Gibraltar Museum and I run the Natural History Unit, and I'm part of the Gib-Bats project. So this evening we're working in one of our usual sites. We've got a few around the rock. So far it's going quite well. We've caught the Schreiber's bat so far, as you'll see. We're doing this in a few sites around the rock, and we're basically looking at what species are using the rock and at what time of the year. We've been using a special system this evening which is called a harp trap, and it's basically like a harp, like the musical instrument, and that's one of the methods that we're using to capture these animals. And the other method that we're using is a net, like you use for birds, capturing birds on, like I'm sure you've seen on some other programs. And the purpose of the study is, as I said, with the Schreiber's bat in particular, we're trying to look at how often they are using the rock, and if they're males, females, what conditions they're in, are they breeding here? It's quite an interesting thing, really. So this evening we're catching the bats, and what we're doing is we're measuring their wings, their size, their weight, the conditions they're in, the breeding condition, if they're male or female, and this is all very important data for us. It's incredibly useful for us to know when they're using the rock and why they're using the rock. And it also gives us a good idea of the size of the population within the sites that we're using.
My name is Stephen Waugh. I'm the Senior Environment Officer in the Department of the Environment, and I'm also a member of the Gib-Bats team. Bats are actually one of those species that are afforded some of the highest levels of protection, not only in Gibraltar but also at a European level. In fact, part of the reason why Gibraltar or the Upper Rock and other areas are designated as an EU protected site are precisely because of the bat species that we have in different habitats of Gibraltar. For example, we have the Schreiber's bent-winged bat, which is afforded protection under the Habitats Directive. Luckily, we have that species in Gibraltar, and it's one of those species that we're monitoring practically on a monthly basis as part of the Gib-Bats project.
Thanks to the Botanic Gardens and Beacons.
This is our 8th year that we celebrate Bat Night. We've usually held it here in the Alameda Botanic Gardens in the open air theatre, because it's one of the few places in Gibraltar where it's not only possible but far more likely for bats to be attracted because of the pond that we have behind me. Bats actually pose very little or no danger to humans. In fact, they are very beneficial, because even a small pipistrelle can eat several thousand very small insects in a night. Things like mosquitoes and midges and things which we find annoying. So generally they are beneficial. They're beneficial to the environment and, in which they live. And they are not harmful. Sometimes, unfortunately, what people are used to seeing is a picture of a bat being handled, and therefore the photo might be close up and they're baring their teeth. But bear in mind that most European bats are smaller than a human hand, some of them far smaller. The body of a pipistrelle bat is the size of an adult thumb. If you take away the wings, they're extremely small, and they are not aggressive. Due to superstition, popular culture like films, for example, vampires, and other Scooby-Doo, I always think about the Scooby-Doo, the bats coming out of a tunnel. Bats can sometimes be considered a bit scary. You see them during Halloween in such costumes and the like. And unfortunately they've had a bit of a bad press, but there's absolutely no reason for that. Most bats echolocate to find their way about in the dark and also to find prey. And they do so at a frequency, like a pitch. Think of it like a radio frequency, like when you try and tune in a channel, like Radio Gibraltar, for example, on a frequency, and you change that channel up and down, you change the frequency. Bats do very much the same thing in order to find their prey and to navigate. Most of that echolocation takes place at a far higher frequency than humans are able to hear. And for that purpose, we have a variety of what we call bat detectors, which are essentially an ultrasonic microphone which actually picks up that frequency, slows it down for us to hear, and expresses it in a way which humans can relate to, can understand.
This is a bat detector. This little piece above here is connected to the iPad, and we use it to detect bats that are passing through and coming into a particular area. We can also use it to identify what species of bat we have in front of us. This, for example, is a serotine bat. This was recorded a few nights ago, which was pretty close. This is the species that was found to be living in Gibraltar only a couple of years ago. It's the Sabaline serotine. And if I put it onto the live mode, we can start detecting and seeing what's actually around with us. Today so far we've had soprano pipistrelles flying over, and with a bit of luck we'll see some of them.
Gib-Bats is an ongoing project. It was started a couple of years ago, and it's made up of members of GONS, the Gibraltar Museum, bat experts from the UK, and also supported by the Department of the Environment. It has been a very successful project so far. For example, one of the first things that happened of note was we caught in these gardens an Sabaline serotine bat, which had not previously been recorded in Gibraltar. And we're going from strength to strength in that regard.
It started on the 31st of October 2013, and so far we've been able to find 7 species of bats in Gibraltar. It was at the time thought there was only 4 species, so we've been able to up that by 3. The project tries to not only study the bats of Gibraltar, but also try to find where they're roosting, and also try to raise awareness with the public in terms of conservation of these species.
So one of the things that we're also doing with these bats is we're taking DNA samples. The DNA samples, we're taking little swabs of saliva from their mouth. This is very important with this particular species we're catching tonight, which is the Schreiber's bat. And that's because recently, only about a year or 2 ago, some of our colleagues working in Doñana identified that the Schreiber's bat is divided into actually 2 species, the Miniopterus schreibersi and the Miniopterus magrabensis, magrabensis being from the north of Africa. And what they've been able to do with DNA sampling is divide the species into 2. And what they're realizing is that the ones in North Africa are actually a completely different species. So our input at the moment is we're taking samples of the DNA of the individuals found here in Gibraltar, and we're sending them back to the laboratory. where we're checking if they are shriebersi or magrobensis. It would be very interesting for us to find a magrobensis, because that would actually mean that bats are traveling across the Strait of Gibraltar, something that's never been able to be proven before. These animals are important within any life cycle, as is any other animal. The amount of insects that they eat, that forms an integral part of the ecosystem and the job that they're doing. What we're trying to do here is find out exactly why certain species have disappeared. With the data that we're obtaining, we're communicating with companies and agencies abroad in the UK, Germany, Portugal, Spain, and trying to figure out why they're dropping. When we have answers, what can we do to make sure that humans and bats can live together?
At the moment we have 7 species of bats in Gibraltar. The smallest ones, for example, being the pipistrelle species, and they serve a vital function when it comes to the ecology. For example, the pipistrelle can eat up to 3,000 mosquitoes in one night. And that serves to highlight the importance of such a small creature, and it's precisely what the team is investigating at the moment. There are other bigger species, for example, the noctule bat, which we know is found around Gibraltar. That is a very large bat, in fact, and it feeds on small passerine birds. We haven't been able to catch one yet, but I'm sure that as the project progresses, hopefully we'll get there.